There we go. All right. And we're not going to waste any time. We're jumping right into it. I don't even have a splash screen. I don't have anything. This is the level of professionalism that you can expect on this podcast. Welcome, everybody. It's another week, and it's been a beautiful one. It's another episode of State of CS, and you'll notice that my partner in crime here is not the usual one. Anders, unfortunately, could not make it today. He had the hospital visit, just a standard checkup. Don't worry. Don't worry. Just a checkup. But he couldn't make it. And so I was just like, this is too good. This is too good. There's too much good news to talk about. And Monty just happened to tweet at me, and we got a little bit back and forth. I reach out to Monty, our man here, and I'm like, Monty, you want to come on to the show with me to talk for a minute real quick about all this fun stuff that's going down? So welcome, Monty. Thanks a lot for joining me, man.
Yeah, my pleasure, especially because your topic is mostly about LCS or League of Legends teams. That's for the most part the main focus of the teams that have formed this new PEA organization. So I hope I can give some insight.
Yeah, that is the main thing. Exactly. Unfortunately I did not do a good enough introduction. Let's say, Thorin would obviously make some jokes, but then he'd obviously introduce you to the stream. You are the ex-owner of Renegades. Basically now is how it's broken down. So you have been involved in the Counter-Strike scene. You know the behind the scenes, what it takes to run an organization, how to interact with players, and all that jazz. And so you do have quite a bit of insight on the topic. And so I felt like perfect. Perfect.
Well, maybe. Look, I love watching CS:GO. I fucking love Star Ladder. This weekend I love watching all the Renegades games. So here's my dirty secret. I've been casting since 2004, and I started in Warcraft 3. Obviously, I was not obviously, but I was a manager for Verge Gaming for Warcraft 3, which also had a CS 1.6 team, like way back in the day. And I have never, ever, 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 ever in my life played a single game of Counter-Strike. It's shocking. Shocking for like a gamer, right? Shocking.
Hey, this is like the game that you went, you're playing in high school, you go to a LAN or whatever, you go to your friend's place.
I was an RTS nerd, man. I was an RTS nerd.
So for you, it was, man, we're gonna sit down and play some Warcraft 3. Maybe
yeah, that's right.
War.
But it was very interesting to me. Like, I'm a big fan of watching CS:GO now as a spectator sport, but I have never played a single game of any version of Counter-Strike in my entire life.
So, I'm glad that you make that apparent for everybody. You make that obvious and say, hey, guys, take it with a grain of salt. But I don't think that is where, we're not going to ask you to break down, the timings and around. I'm going to be like, Monty,
things, right.
So, you obviously very close with Sponge. You took him under your wing, gave him advice on how to run, his team, et cetera. Obviously, right, with your experience. No, what? So, I think the main thing here is just that we need to get into the meat and potatoes of the show, which is going to be obviously the PEA, which was announced last night, and you are you have quite a bit of experience actually across multiple platforms, multiple games now, through your RNG brand, with this sort of thing. And so what I wanted to do, basically right out the gates, fresh off the start, is get your first impression. You saw this go live. What did you think? Because that I think there was a little bit of shock for everybody when it's just like, oh, okay, another one.
Yeah, another one. First off, I love the structure of it, right? I do really agree with what the goals of this league are going to be. When it comes to the actual breakdown of profits, saying that the owners are going to get 50%, the casters and players are going to get 50% divided up among them, I fundamentally agree with what's going on. They say they want to be like the NBA, so basically we have to break down what that means. So what does it mean to be like the NBA, and what do the owners want? Because this is a situation where basically League of Legends owners, for the most part, because these teams are not, maybe you could argue Liquid, right? Because they were in the finals of the last major and the semis of the major before that. Liquid is maybe a major CSGO organization. Cloud9 is in the context of NA, but none of these other teams have a history in CSGO, right? So they're creating a CSGO league, which is very interesting.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to stop you right there real quick in case you guys are not new to the topic. The teams that are joining up with PEA, TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, and then, you kind of drop off from there. CLG, Immortals, NRG, and Cole. And I mean, I suppose out of the remaining teams, Immortals is the one that stands out because they've actually been
Sure.
getting some results recently. But okay, sorry, go ahead.
Right, but only recently because they picked up the Tempo Storm team, right?
Right.
So it's not like they have a long history. C9 and CLG and TL obviously and TSM obviously have much longer histories in CS:GO than Immortals does. But as far as current performance levels, or recent performance levels, current maybe not
recent.
Liquid right now, but Liquid in the last year has been very good. So this is, but mostly when we look at these teams, we think about their LoL teams. We don't think about their Counter-Strike teams, right? So it's interesting to me that they're forming a Counter-Strike league. Obviously, they cannot form a League of Legends league because Riot locks the circuit. So they can't actually make their own tournament. So they're sort of being forced into doing an NA CS:GO league, right? And notably, other NALCS teams like Envy, which I sold Renegades to, is not included because that's obviously a French team, and they're not going to be doing that in NA. So this is very clearly an NA-based organization. So they want to try and do rev sharing. And this is, in my opinion, from being an LCS owner, a reaction to the current state of League of Legends in North America, which is that Riot doesn't give revenue share, doesn't give equity, doesn't give fuck all to the teams besides a stipend that hasn't increased in 3 years, which is about a quarter. They give about $250,000 a year. It's about a quarter of what you need to legitimately run an NALCS organization. Basically, an NALCS team costs $1 million plus per year right now. And I can tell you that because I owned one for half of this year. So yeah, that is basically like the bottom line to be competitive. So they're trying to escape that because right now their only revenue streams are sponsors and to a minor degree merchandising. They don't have broadcasting rights. They don't have revenue share, which is what they're trying to escape from here. They want to create their own league so they can get their own sponsors, so they can sell the broadcast rights to Twitch or to Azubu or to whomever else, so that they can actually make more money and be a profitable enterprise. So you have to understand their goals here first and foremost.
Well, the timing for me is a bit uncanny, right? Just uncanny. I mean, you have all this news breaking going over in the League of Legends sphere right now with obviously Riot coming under fire. The guys who are heading up Riot coming under fire right now for mismanaging the league, mismanaging their
justifiably.
relationships. Pardon me?
Justified.
I'm not placed to say. I just read the articles. You are placed
very
to say.
legitimately.
You do have that insight. But all of this basically breaking out where Reggie just completely, triple, quadruple, tombstone slammed the guy who called him out, Mark Merrill, with the hard facts that it is actually a huge cost to run an LCS team. They aren't making money back. They aren't in what they consider to be a fair relationship with Riot.
Sure.
For them to just come out now, a couple of weeks later, a week later, and just say, actually, we're starting our own show over here now, and it's not with it's with CS. And CS, to me, it's just wild because now you actually, to give some context, right? A couple months now, back in April, May, WESA went live, and that is run by ESL. And it seems to me that this is they basically kind of cookie cutter, in a way. They've taken the WESA model. They've they have their league, so they're going to have their league that's built around these teams, and then there's some kind of profit sharing. There's some kind of deal there.
Is that what WESA is? Is that what WESA is? Because I'm still unclear about what WESA is, and I've tried to look into it, but I actually don't understand it.
I'm giving what my perspective is on it based off of all the information that's come in, and to me it just seems they tried to come around and say no, it's about the players, right? But this was after the original impression that you got, which is actually this is just a bunch of teams kind of gathering together. And why would a bunch of teams kind of gather together? To me, it sounds like that involves marketing and sales. It just says, right, we want to be able to become a bit more of a unit to package things up nicer so that we can try and reach bigger sponsors, reach bigger deals, and then hopefully that all gets divvied up. It felt like the player aspect of it came afterwards, right? When shit hit the fan.
I guess the insidious part that may or may not be true with WESA, because I can't tell if it's true or not from what I've read about them. The insidious part is that I feel like ESL is trying to make a profit off of WESA, in that they want to give a WESA like seal of approval to events and charge like a fee for that, right? For the teams to compete in an event to be like that's what sort of makes me uneasy. Is that untrue?
I'm not placed to say, unfortunately. I mean,
Well, exactly.
I could see a world in which they do own the licenses to the teams and say, right, you want to have our teams participating. I mean, it could happen. Obviously, they can never say that though, because I mean, that's the thing, right? That's where you start getting. Wait, hold on, I got some tinfoil around here somewhere. Like you start reaching out and you start saying, okay,
no,
how do we
I
look
just
at
don't
this?
know whether like a WESA like seal of approval is part of that, where like no teams, and not to say not to say that's a bad thing, because if they can force other organizations to pay a fee to have these teams in to help the teams, that's one thing. The problem is that this isn't independent; it's part of ESL. Like you can't have a broadcaster trying to unionize teams. And that's where I see this Professional Esports Association, PEA, being more legitimate, because they're independent. They're a group of teams that are negotiating together as a collective bargaining unit. And so there isn't some sort of broadcast entity that is up there trying to like be the puppeteer of the teams or make a profit off of what the teams do, right?
That is
So
actually
I
a
do
very good
see,
point to point out. Yeah.
I do see that the PEA is more legitimately an American sports organization where they want to sell the broadcasting rights. Because this is again, I know American sports. I'm not too familiar with the business angle of European sports, but in American sports, the NFL, the owners own the NFL. In the NBA, the owners own the NBA. They sell the broadcasting rights to various TV channels for profit. That's how they make their money. And this is definitely cut from the same cloth as American sports. Whether or not European sports operate like WESA, I just see a fundamental conflict of interest between a broadcaster who is hosting their own events and can instantly approve themselves, right, as a WESA licensed entity, and then also try and like shake down other people to get WESA teams. That's my problem with it. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they could do that.
They could. What's interesting here, and you're right bringing that up, because now that also opens it up for production companies, et cetera, who are actually going to be running this shindig for PEA at the beginning of the year. I mean, they've stated in the press release that they want to start the 17th of January, but they haven't actually told us anything to do with that as far as who's going to be running it, who's the production behind this, right? ESL with WESA, that all comes in one nice, neat little package with a bow on top. They have all the infrastructure necessary to actually run the damn thing. With PEA, we're left kind of in the dark right now, wondering exactly where, how this is going to go. But you do bring up a good point, because then it means, well, we're not satisfied with this one producer, say. We can actually open it up to have a bidding sort of scenario where producers can come in and bid for the content to actually produce the content, or you're just paying them out of your pocket. I mean, that's it does seem like there's a little bit more to go around. I mean, to me, it still seems this whole thing is built off of profit sharing, right? And so, I mean, this has to be long term, because I cannot see where the profit's going to come from, at least in the short term.
Exactly, and that's the problem. So let's just dial this back for a second.
Sure.
So they're promising at PEA a prize pool of at least $1 million during its first year and $500,000 for season one. But these teams are in a very weak position to negotiate this right now, because what do we know about these teams? So from the League of Legends scene, we know that most of these teams, via their tweets, via Reginald saying to Andy Din, Reginald, who's the owner of TSM, saying to Mark Merrill, who's the president of Riot, he openly tweeted, we've submitted a plan to you about how to monetize. He openly made a twit longer about saying that League of Legends teams are not profitable, etc. All the other teams on Twitter supported this like hashtag LCS forever stuff, right, which includes basically every team in here except for Call and Energy Now, who's not an LCS team any longer. But fundamentally, what do we know? They have admitted that they are not making a profit, or at least not much of one, in League of Legends. So we're talking about teams that are barely scraping even in LoL. And for the most part, we can also say these teams are not making a bunch of money in Counter-Strike. And if we actually calculate the amount of money that they're making through their other divisions, considering all of these teams, every single one of these teams, except for maybe TL, is primarily a League of Legends team, where is the money coming from in this league? Because you can't both be complaining to LoL, your major game, except for maybe TL, like I said, that you're not making any money, and then try and promise like ridiculous prize pools, right?
And
that's my main issue here.
That is the follow-up.
Is that where is the fucking money? Where do these guys get $1 million for the first year and $500,000 for season 1? Now, they are powerful brands, and to be fair, many of these guys could have gone to sponsors and said, hey, we'll use our massive brands, Remote, CSGO, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But we have to ask, this is obviously a long-term play from them. And they say, we're going to do this 50% rev share thing, but they don't have the best CSGO teams. They're not profitable in League of Legends. So what is the real reach of this, especially compared to something like Turner to E-League, which is a giant company? I just don't think they can actually make a splash here.
Well, especially given the first thing you think about, right, when you're looking at the scene itself, the way that it's set up right now is that it was already tight enough with 3 multi-million-dollar leagues going on. ESL, right. Pro League, right, Facet's ECS, and then, Turner's E-League. I mean, they were already battling for real estate. And so the way that I see it now is that this is why I mentioned WESA, and this is why it's interesting to me in that sense, is because WESA and PEA now can basically attempt to split things in half and say, right, WESA gets Europe, PEA gets North America. But
they have to have the money to do that.
It still seems catastrophic to me, though, as far as sales are concerned, though, because you're building your league on 2 leagues that are going to run NA and EU. You're basically amputating a limb if you're a tournament organizer saying, okay, we won't run a North American league anymore because they're going to run it or something. I mean, how does this work?
I mean, they're in competition in NA, though, right, with Turner, and Turner can bury these guys. They have way more resources than anybody else. E-League is much larger than this. And we also know that Faceit has been getting a lot of VC. Mm-hmm. So I guess my read on this is that they're hoping to announce this and then acquire venture capital investors now, post-announcement. Because I just don't see that this is sustainable for these teams in the long term unless they actually have outside investment in their interest. So I think the way you have to look at this is a long-term play, which I agree with fundamentally. This is a long-term play to make an independent tournament body that is independent of developers. It's easiest to do that with Valve because Valve gives the least fucks, as we know, out of the 3 major developers, Riot, Blizzard, and Valve. Valve gives the least amount of fucks of anybody, right? So it's easiest to go into CSGO because the international doesn't exist. When the international exists in Dota, it throws all the teams under the bus because players don't need teams to be successful in Dota. Ergo, they can't collect a bargain as teams. So CSGO is the easiest market to do this in my opinion. But they go in on this and they say, okay, we're gonna start this body, and basically what they're hoping is in 2 to 3 years that this body, the developers will go to this body as an independent source to produce new games for esports, right? It's not about now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking on the player side at this point, how did the teams sell this to the players? Because the player is thinking, well, how long does my career actually last if this gets off the floor? Will I be around to benefit? I have to play in this league the same way that any of the WESA teams have to play in Pro League, right?
Yeah, but they're getting paid salary at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, they are.
There's basically, by participating in this league, the players are getting bonuses. So it is actually good for the players. Unlike in every other league that we see in CS, if they are actually committing 50% of the money to the players, the teams, so for example, TSM will pay the players the salaries, and you'll get a bonus for playing in this league. Mm. But to be fair, you also get a bonus for playing in E-League. So,
and prize pool to consider as well. I mean,
and stickers and majors obviously is probably much more money than you could be getting out of this.
I mean, you and me both when we read this press release, though, and I like how you dropped it in there as just like an afterthought. Like, I'll just kind of include this in here as part of a nice package. But the fact that casters get a share of this as well. Like, that's the holy grail if you're a commentator.
But it sounds that way, right?
It sounds that way.
It sounds that way. So my problem with this press release is they don't say that they're paying casters a flat fee. Which if casters get a flat fee where it's like, So, for example, you and I are both freelance
That's the
casters.
usual
We
way.
go to, yes, well, it's the normal way in esports if you're not part of fucking League of Legends, right? But for the majority of esports, we're in the normal category, and like, company paid casters. I shouldn't say company. I'm paid a salary by OGN, right? But I'm still technically a freelancer. I sign yearly contracts with them.
There you go.
I'm not a corporate employee of Riot Games for an indefinite period, which is what the LCS casters are. But basically, this sounds great, right? It's like, oh, if you're a caster, you get a percentage of it. It's like being a caster in, say, Dota, where Valve is very good at giving casters in-game signatures so they can make, revenue, a percentage of revenue off of those sales.
For the international, have to specify.
Yes, for the international, but it's a lot of money to those guys. But in terms of casting, if PEA, I'll ask you a question. If PEA were to walk up to you or me and say, you are getting a percentage equal to a player, what would you say? And that's your pay for this event.
And that's your pay. Obviously the first thing is, okay, is this just a flat fee, or is there some kind of,
Exactly.
is there a percentage involved?
No.
And also, you need to know the slice of the pie.
All we know, they said, okay, 50% goes to the teams, 50% goes to the players.
Yeah.
We'll assume, based on their press announcement, that it's an equal division between all players, right? So each player get an equal percentage of 50%. And then casters, so they cut casters into that 50% too. So it's disingenuous, number one, because they say 50% share of the profits. Players and owners receive 50% share of the profits, and each caster will receive shares equal to a player. Let's just assume that that's coming out of the players' 50% for a second, because that's what it sounds like. Yeah. That's what it sounds like, and I bet you that's what it is. So let's just say, okay, so it's actually not 50% of the players. It's 50% of the players plus all the casters, right? But let's say somebody walks up to you. You're going to cast PEA, and they say, we're going to give you this percentage, which is 50% divided by the total number of players and the total number of casters. What do you say to them, Similar?
Well, the door is right there. So feel free
Exactly.
to go ahead
Exactly.
and I'll see you. And no, like what you would say is just like, okay, well, you would obviously need numbers. This is a huge risk because it's a first time thing, and so if you're an established freelancer and you're used to dealing with these sorts of negotiations, you're just like, I have no information. How can I possibly make a decision with no information?
And it's revenue. It's a new league. Now, to break this down,
exactly. The whole thing could be making shitloads of money, but if all that money is getting spent to actually run the league and there's nothing left, you get 50. You get what? 5% of zero.
I would like to believe that they just worded this very poorly, but when my first reading, like my eyes like bugged out of my fucking head, and I was looking at this, I was like, there's no way anybody worth their salt as a caster is going to do this league, because you're banking on something making a profit. So let's take a step back. Okay, so in business, maybe I'm not banking on something making a profit, but you know what I get when I'm not sure something is going to make a profit? Equity. So if they said, we're going to give casters equity in the league, and if we make a profit, then they will receive a profit, but they get partial ownership, I'd say, hey, that sounds, I'm willing to take a career risk on this. I'll do some shit for free just in case this takes off. But when you're literally offering me just a cut of the profit, and that cut of the profit is equal to every player, so you're telling me as a caster, I'm going to make the same amount of profit as a rookie player of fucking, what, energy or complexity? Like, you're telling me Complexity's worst player in CSGO is going to make the same amount of money as me. But wait, they also make their team salary, and I just make the percentage of profits? Like, good fucking joke. No, that is an ass deal for a top-tier commentator. And also,
like, the first thing that you got to think about here is all these horror stories you hear coming out of Hollywood, where you got actors, right, and they're promised a percentage of the profit. But the way that the studios rig the game is that
Oh,
there
yeah.
is no profit, and so the movie makes $500 million, but all of that goes into costs. Sorry, no
Yeah.
profit to be
All
had.
the advertising.
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
you know?
You're totally right. You're totally right. I mean, that
You
shit
got George
happens all
Lucas
the time.
ordering, I don't know, lobster and champagne every night in the hotel, just to put it on the bill, just so that there's no profit. I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of ways that you could get screwed. I mean, obviously, this is all just going to come down to how savvy you are in negotiations.
Let's be very clear. This is conjecture from us. We don't know whether or not they're going to pay casters a flat fee or a fair rate. Knowing the owners who are in this league, and I actually like most of the owners that are involved in this, I don't think they're going to fuck casters. But this is definitely, like, I read it and I was like, my fucking like alarm bells were going off left and right in this. I was like, I would never sign this deal. Like, holy shit. Unless I got equity. The equity thing is legit. And they don't comment on that.
No. And yeah, it's good that you bring that up. We are only going off the press release and what we can kind of glean from that.
Right. And maybe they worded it badly. Like, who the fuck knows? Like, we literally have no idea what in the world this PEA thing is right now. Even I don't know, and I'm friends with most of these owners, and I can only speculate on what they're doing. Now, what I will say is that based on what we know of their current profitability, is that these people have no business doing this. And here's what I think is going to happen in esports, and here's what I have advised many of these owners to do. And here's what I was planning to do myself before I was banned from League of Legends, which is sell to super rich people. Basically, if you want this system to work of equity, you have to have some sort of long-term plan, right? You have to have tens and tens of millions of dollars in the bank to make sure that you can basically outlast every other competitor for these CSGO leagues. Because CSGO is like insanely saturated at this point, like way too saturated. I think Valve should fucking step in and be like, stop making leagues, like stop this shit. There's too much shit going on. But
never gonna happen.
I mean, it should happen, but that's my opinion. But
we can
basically,
talk about that later if you like.
Yeah, sure. Basically, like, when they talk about making the NBA, the best way you can make the NBA is with NBA fucking owners, like Energy has. If you have, let's just pretend for a second that all of these teams sold majority equity to an NBA team, and these NBA teams came in to C9 and TSM and Liquid and all these other people and said, we are in for $15 or $20 million each over the next 3 years. And they said, we're just going to fucking spend everybody under the table. We're going to make the most baller-ass league that's ever existed. And we're going to lose a shit ton of money on it because by doing this league, we are going to take over the entire market. We're going to provide better production. We're going to provide better prize pools. We're going to provide better salaries to the players. We're going to provide better salaries for the casters. We're going to do it out the ass. So that in 3 years, basically, like, every other, Face It, ESL, all these people are just destroyed by us. That's the way to do it. You want to take over this league, you need a lot of money and investment so that you can become the premier esports league in America. And I will tell you, I have talked to many, many, many professional sports teams in America, NFL teams, NBA teams, Major League Baseball teams. I have personally had conversations with them. And their main concern with esports, because they're American and they're used to American sports systems, is that the owners don't own the league. So if you're going to create an owner-owned league, previously these people have not wanted to invest because Riot owned the league. And they're like, why the fuck would we invest in an LCS team when Riot owns everything? You have now made an owner-owned league. This is great. Totally approve. Now your job is, as teams, is to sell your equity to people who are much richer than you so you can drown the market. And you can get Mark Cuban or whomever else into this scene, and you can say, we're gonna lose 30 million in our first 3 years, but after that, all our competitors are gonna be cold corpses on the floor, and we're gonna actually have an independent league that doesn't need developers. We don't need Valve. We don't need Blizzard. We don't need Riot. We're going to be the biggest league in the world, and then the players can get paid fairly. Collective bargaining can exist. That is what actually needs to happen. So this is only the first step. But these guys, the teams, they don't have the money to do the next step. That's my problem, is that they have to have the money to do the next step.
Do you think, for me, what's always going to be the main concern, though, is the fact that, yeah, okay, you may not need the developer and you may not need the developer involved, but at the end of the day, the developer still owns the IP. Do you think that that's something that makes it much? I mean, this to me, if I'm an investor coming into the space and I'm seeing what Riot do, and I'm just like, oh, they can literally kill your multi-million-dollar investment overnight at the drop of a hat. Like,
yeah, bring it. But they killed.
You know, like they can do this.
They killed my multi-million-dollar investment overnight, Sembler. They didn't kill Shaq's multi-million-dollar investment overnight. They didn't kill, Stan Kroenke's multi-million-dollar. They didn't kill Mark Cuban's multi-million-dollar investment overnight, right? They killed mine. I'm a small fish. I get that, right? I'm endemic esports. It's fine. I'm super mad about it, but if I actually take a step back and look at the health of the industry, we got to have guys who are much bigger than you or me or any of the endemic owners involved, right? So yes, they may be scared, but the only way to prevent this is, so let's talk about how tournaments work.
Okay, sure, we can do that. I've got this. You can't see me. This is the sad thing, is that you can't see my face right now, because I'm also going off on this tangent right now where it's
we can disagree on that part, but
I
feel blessed away. But when we talk about the actual ownership structure and the way that things work in esports, it's like getting rid of the small fry can be actually good for things, because there's a way to invest with a lot more money and in a lot bigger and more professional way. And if we have sports teams come in, their fan bases are just so fucking big and they can drive so much traffic. And yeah, 90, not 99, maybe like 90% of people are going to give fuck all about, an owner's new esports team. But there's a way to get a certain percentage of that. And we know as millennials, part of the millennial generation, that this isn't something that's going to be stopped. Like, it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And also the business knows that, right? But the businesses inherently are not interested in investing in the current esports infrastructure because they can't own anything. And there needs to be a system of ownership, because as we were just talking about, the developers, they pay money right now. They fucking pay money. Like Riot pays everything in the LCS for the World Championship, for MSI, for everything. They foot the entire bill. It's ridiculous. Why should they have to do that? Basically, you say, why should developers want to give up power? The thing is that developers are finally, and only very recently, to be fair, this year, and especially next year and the next 2 years, reaching a crossroads where instead of paying tournament organizers, for example, ESL gets paid out the ass for IEMs, for everything like that. The developers pay them a lot of money. They actually rely on that for profit. I work for OGN. Same thing is true. Developers pay OGN, right, to broadcast on Korean TV. It's different because the Korean market is different. I'm not going to get into that here. But now we have finally hit a point where developers can give up power, because yes, they control the IP, but they can, with a broadcaster, they can actually just contract whatever provisions they want for their IP. And instead of losing money, they can either lose no money, or hopefully they can make money. Like, the goal of esports should be, I'm Valve. I want CSGO to be huge. Right now, for the majors, for the international, Valve pays a shit ton of money. Now, obviously, they probably make money net because of the compendium and everything like that, but they are the ones who are footing the bill. Ideally, what should happen with Valve is that they say, hey, you, Turner or OGN or ESL or whoever broadcasting organization exists, you are going to broadcast, Twitch, whatever. You are going to broadcast this, and you're going to pay us a percentage of the revenue, and then we make money. So Valve could theoretically make money off of stickers, the compendium, IP revenue share, and then the actual broadcasting company would hopefully make money off of pay-per-view, or which I think actually does. This is a contentious opinion. I actually am very in favor of pay-per-view, but
it doesn't. It's not that it can't work. It's that you need exclusive control of the product to be able to make pay-per-view work, in my opinion. Because
right, which is why all this multi-league,
which is why it's never going to happen with the current league structure and how things actually work in CS, for example. I mean,
it did happen because for the first 3 years of OGN here in Korea, Korean League of Legends was pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. It wasn't entire. It was like 480p was free, but
high def. StarCraft 2, right?
Right, for GSL, same system.
So I mean,
but basically, like, developers should make money off of their IP. To answer your question in the most long-winded way possible, but yes, I think that the next step has to be that developers are paid percentage of revenue for their IP. So they make the game, they basically have contracts where you must present the game in this way. They have a say over the artistic control, which I believe developers should have. I think that they are the artists behind the game. They should say, you need to broadcast the game like this because we want this kind of set design or this kind of feel. Like, for example, with Hearthstone, Blizzard very clearly wants like a tavern feel, right? And I agree with that. I think it's unique, and I think they should be able to stipulate that in their contracts. If that's what they want, then that's what they want. And then the actual events, the production companies have to pay them a fee or percentage revenue.
I mean, this still comes down to just how involved the marketing department is for each developer, right? I mean, I guess League of Legends, right? It's all seen as marketing for them. Blizzard, it's 100%. All just marketing budget that they have to burn. There's some marketing guys like, I've got X number of millions that I need to spend on marketing. I will allocate 30% of that to
of hundreds of billions, more than likely.
Like whatever, we could say trillions, whatever. It's still just a marketing thing until they actually figure it out, or I suppose develop a trust, like a relationship where there is trust. They understand there's a mutual understanding between the TO and the developer that the TO isn't going to fuck up that developer's game, their brand, that they're going to be properly represented. I mean, for me, ESL do a good job. Turner, for me, it's just like Valve have got to be over the moon with what Turner have been doing for CS. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, the level of production involved in that whole tournament is nuts, and so.
Turner is, but see, the thing is that Turner is the first producer in the West that has ever been on par with Riot. And I think that's what's so amazing about Riot, is that Riot did all that shit themselves. The executive producer for Riot is a multi-Emmy winning Olympic producer. The production team, I work with them frequently. They're great. And before Riot existed, OGN was definitely, and probably, I would argue still is the best producer. But in the West, Turner is the first person to come along and challenge Riot ever. And I think Turner does an amazing job. But it's a new thing, right?
Yeah, and the big question is obviously, speculation on the ratings. Is this a success? Are they going to stick with it? All that sort of stuff. I was definitely wondering going into next year how it's all going to pan out with E-League. I mean, TBS, all that jazz, right? It means that there's got to be guys, number crunchers back there. You can have the guys with the vision who are definitely looking at it saying, this is what we want to do. But at the end of the day, there's got to be somebody with a checklist.
But yes, but the thing about E-League is that it was never designed to be a hit on television, right? That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
Basically, when I heard about E-League, I think that smart television channels know that TV is dead. And everybody, the world, I have a lot of, I do a lot of stuff in esports. And I've been to marketing firms in New York City and talked to VPs of marketing who I go to their marketing firms, and I'm not going to name names because confidentiality.
It's fine, don't
but
worry.
I go to marketing firms, like big marketing firms in New York City. And I go to their offices, and they have walls on esports. And they're producing pamphlets, they're like books this thick on statistics, marketing statistics of esports. And I just sit there and I go to their offices and they're like, okay, this event, this is the viewership, and this is the demographic. They know fucking more about esports statistics than I do. I mean, it's nuts, the amount that the market is researching. And these are basically these marketing firms are like trendsetter marketing firms. Like their clients are major, like top American corporations, and their job is to consult and to say, this is where you should spend your advertising budget. And these firms are keyed the fuck in on esports right now. They are keyed in.
The marketing firms.
Yes, the marketing firms that say,
We have to specify.
basically big companies go and they're like, we have a giant advertising budget. We have $1 billion. Where should we spend this money? And they go to trend-setting marketing firms. They're like, what's the next big thing? And these firms, I've been to them, and they're all about esports because the demographic is 15 to 35 males almost exclusively. It's the holy grail demographic, and they see this shit and they want in. And so when I look at Turner also everybody knows TV is dying. It's not a secret. Like, TV is a piece of shit medium. It's awful. Why do I have to buy, like, personally, I don't know, Sebler, when was the last time you had a cable subscription for TV?
6 years ago. When I haven't missed
That's
a single
actually
day.
really recent. So for me,
I wasn't
when
paying
you were
for it.
when you were in college.
Pardon me?
When you were in college?
Basically, yeah. I
Right.
still lived at home when I was in school, so I mean, for me,
Yeah.
it wasn't even me paying for it. It was the
It was your parents. Yeah. So for me too, right? I left for college in 2005, and I was 18. That was the last time I have ever in my life had any kind of TV.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was, like, I have a TV sitting next to me right now, but it's hooked up to my PC. It doesn't get, even in Korea, channels I can get over the air. I literally have not had TV since in over 10 years, nearly 12 years now. So Turner's not dumb. They know that our generation is much more interested in very specific content, right? When I go to Netflix, I don't give a shit about what Netflix has for the most part. I typically watch documentaries or whatever, right? Like, that's my thing.
There's a point to be made there, though. I mean, you have a case in point right here. It's the Olympics. I mean, there's been huge uproar right now, NBC, and how they're handling the online portion of it. How there's a massive drop, some stat, 25% drop in viewership from that demographic, from like the golden demographic, basically. And some journalist, I was reading this article, right? Go ahead. I see you laughing.
No, did you watch the Olympics? I'm just curious.
Fuck no. You kidding me? Because I don't have a TV.
Oh, really?
And then
I mean, I did.
You did.
I
watched it
anyway,
when I was in a
ahead.
hotel, and it was on the TV in the hotel lobby, and I was just like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I'll sit down and watch some ping pong for a minute, you know. But but that was it, right? My level of interest wasn't that high. We'll put it that way. But multiple people basically going about and saying, I tried to connect online, and it was like the most painful experience I've ever had. I literally put intentionally like 30 minutes to 45 minutes to try and get content online, and I couldn't do it. When we all know that anybody today from our age group it takes longer than a minute to find the content. They're just like, fuck it, I'll watch something else, you know? Like,
it's not even that we don't want to pay for the content. Like, that's
Absolutely.
the dumb shit. So for years, I wanted to watch Game of Thrones, and HBO was like, you must have an American cable subscription and subscribe to HBO. I was like, fuck you, I'm pirating it. You know what happened? They released HBO Now. You know what I do? I subscribe to HBO Now because I don't want to pirate it. First off, I want to pay them because that's what I want to do because I like the content. And second off, I have money and not time, right? I would rather just fucking pay them money than go on like a torrent hunt for this shit. I don't give a fuck. I just want to be able to stream it in HD. And I'm a big NFL fan. Are you an NFL fan, or are you too European for that shit?
No, it's not the European side, man. The only NFL I've been involved in is the Super Bowl barbecue parties, where you meet up with your friends, drink a bunch of beer, and watch the game. You know, that's like the extent of my NFL involvement. But
yeah, fair enough. So I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan because I'm from Colorado in the States, right? So, for example, today it was Denver's first game. They won the Super Bowl last year. It was their first game rematch it was a Super Bowl rematch of the Carolina Panthers versus the Denver Broncos. So I was sitting here in Korea, and I watched the game in fucking stunning HD from NFL. And the thing is that because I'm in Korea, NFL will sell me for $200 a year HD insane access to every single game, regular season, postseason, preseason, everything that I want to watch, because I'm not part of the American cable culture. I can't even buy this in America. If I had an American IP, they wouldn't let me buy this. But because I live outside of America and there are these cable packages, it's fucking amazing here. It's way better to be an NFL fan if you're not in America than if you are in America. It's wonderful.
I found that for football. I found that that in Europe for football, I'm actually using the proper term for the sport, not soccer.
Whatever, hand egg, whatever.
But watching the World Cup in Scandinavia was super easy because they all have national broadcasting channels basically online, right, where all the content gets put online. It's free. You just go to the website, SVT, right, in Sweden, for example, and it's like super easy. Watching Olympics, I went to SVT. I couldn't find anything. I was like, what the fuck? I can watch World Cup soccer, no problem. All the matches, everything, no, easy peasy. Watching the Olympics, which is like, I tried. I literally went there, but it took me a minute, cleared the site, looking for live feeds, no live feeds. Okay, I guess I'm not watching the Olympics. Off, click. Well,
the thing I did for the Olympics, and I actually enjoyed watching the Olympics because what I did was I found a bunch of websites, like legit websites, not fucking restreaming websites or anything like that, for Australian commentary, English commentary, Irish commentary, Canadian commentary.
Irish, that's got to be good.
Well, I used to live in Ireland, so I'm a fan of the Irish. But so what I did is I just have a VPN here in Korea, and so I just VPN'd into all these countries, and I was just sitting there like BBC streamed. They had like 8 streams on for the Olympics anytime. I could watch like bizarre fencing quarterfinals and listen to the British commentators. So for me as a caster, I was like, wow, I could listen to all these casters from all over the world for like weird ass events that aren't even on TV. And so it was just glorious, right? It was wonderful to be able to just like VPN into every country and then just watch all these free streams. I was like, this is fucking great. And your NBC criticism is valid, but for most of the world, especially for BBC, like I said, where they had more than half a dozen streams at any given point in time, it was absolutely awesome to watch the Olympics because I just got to choose whatever the fuck I wanted. And some of the casters, I just did it as a professional exercise too. Some of the casters were hilarious or terrible or weird, and I got to hear a bunch of like how to cast a men's 50-meter air pistol gold medal match. It was interesting. It was interesting from a craft perspective.
What's always fun for sports to listen to sports, right? Is the massive difference, and this is one of the main gripes that people, I suppose, new coming into esports, they're just like, why do you guys talk so much? When you're watching sports, commentators most of the time, either it depends on the match, but you watch a match of football, for example, and the commentator may be just saying the guys' names. They aren't talking, they aren't filling dead air. Or it sounds like to us, right? Where it's like I'll watch a match of football now, and I'm just like, are there commentators? And then somebody says something, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there we go. But mainly like he's just saying, oh, pass to Davidson, and then quiet again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, okay.
I have a theory about that, which is that because the word shoutcaster, you know where they came from, right?
Enlighten us.
So Winamp, right? You remember that?
Oh yeah, this was when there was audio only.
Yeah, that's when I started casting, was before there was any kind of streaming. So there was a Winamp plugin called Shoutcaster, which is, we basically used to do radio broadcasts. So basically esports commentary from like really old school guys like me or Freak or D-Man or these guys,
right?
We got used, Red Eye, yeah. We got used to doing casting as if it was a radio cast. And basically that bled in, because when you have visuals, you'll notice that esports casting is much more similar to radio broadcasting than it is to television broadcasting for sports.
Sure.
And I think that's the reason, that's my theory as to why it's the reason why. The other part of it is that esports have like a billion things going on at one time, so you kind of have to do that. But definitely the roots of it were, we all had to learn to be radio commentators before we had to learn to be video commentators.
Well, that's to me, it's also, I think there's also something where most of the time I find people are messaging me saying, hey, thanks for being so descriptive because I have the game up on my second monitor. I'm not even like watching, I'm doing something else. And then I hear your voice go up. I hear you describe something, and I watch for a minute, and then I go back to doing whatever it is I was doing, like work, school, game, whatever. Right. And I think that's actually probably like, this is why I always want to go to the tournament organizers, and I have in the past, and they never get back to me. Unfortunately, I have to pester them more. It's something that I let drop after a while. But what are they tuning in from? Like, how are they tuning in? And what's the percentage on audio only for Twitch, right?
Sure.
Because I've heard that that number has been going up, and when I heard this was like 8 months ago, right? Where I got asked by a Twitch employee, "Hey, man, consider like saying the score more often because we're seeing like a boost in audio only on stream." And I'm just like, okay, then, interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Because for me, like as far as commentary is concerned, I find audio only, like radio commentary, to be so much more fun because it just forces you to just be descriptive while giving information, and like you have to find that balance and make it interesting and be able to try and paint an actual picture for somebody, right? If they're listening to you, you need to be able to make it super clear in a minimal number of words, right? Just what's happening on screen. And that to me is a much more interesting challenge than just, we're not all just sitting here watching the game, right? I don't know, like
No, I totally agree with you, and I think it's a combination of all of these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, for example, when I used to work in a law firm in New York, and I was watching League of Legends, Korean League of Legends in the morning, where I cast it out here. I was listening to it mostly because I was doing my fucking job, and I was just, I wake up, go to the office, like tune in, and just like listen to it while I did my job. And I think a lot of people are like that.
Because esports is. I don't know. Do you know Lurpus?
I know who he is.
Ex-pro analyst.
I know who he is.
With Thorne and Karn. But he's actually one of the guys who's come back to me recently, where he's just like, "Hey, man, this is the first," because he's always been against commentary, or I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, but never been a big fan, right? And he's just like, well, now he works in a bank, and so he's working long hours, and he's constantly, but he's still trying to keep on top of what's going on in CS. And it's incredible how much he's actually able to keep on top of it, working fucking 12 hours, 13 hours. I don't know what is. He's got an insane life now, but he's just like, dude, keep up with the round scores, keep up with that sort of stuff, because that's what I'm doing, right? I'm sitting here, I'm working on this Excel sheet or whatever, and then I hear your voice go up or something, and I turn and I look, and okay, there you go, right? And goes back to work, right? And I think that's got to be so common with, wow, we're getting off into a tangent, but
yes, so the whole tangent here, I think it's wonderful. I agree with you. It's a very interesting subject, maybe for a different time.
I think so, yeah.
But the whole point of this is that I think Turner's goal is to move away from television, because this has been a long tangent away from what does television offer. And really it's a bridge for them, because television is a dying medium for all of the many reasons that we've expressed so far. You and I both don't watch TV. Most of our generation does not. We want on-demand content. We want very niche and specific content. And so Turner wants to be able to get into that, and the way they do that is by having a television stream, because they are a television broadcast, because they are a television station. But really, this is, for me, my interpretation of what they're doing, and obviously you have more insight on this than I do, is that they're slowly like easing their way into the waters of streaming, because they know this is the future.
Mm-hmm. No, that was my. I wasn't. When E-League was first announced and when we were starting to first get into it, I wasn't hiding it at all. My first impression was this is their gambit. What they're going to do is they're going to dip their toe in the water with CS, try to get a foothold in this online space, and then eventually, slowly work their way in. It's a long-term play, which is, maybe I was a little bit too dire earlier when I was saying, who knows if E-League's going to come back next year, right? But like, I definitely think they're in it for the long run. It's just
I do too.
What's going to happen, right?
And even if they're not at a fundamental level, they would be the first. But I think what they're trying to do, and the audience and the method that they're trying to broadcast, is an inevitability. So if it's not them, it's just going to be somebody else. Like there's no method. There is no method that our generation of cable cutters, you and I, who haven't had TV in 10 years, can you ever picture yourself having a cable subscription? I can't. I don't give a fuck. And like most of our generation is like that. So, as we become the majority, they got to do it. There's no other option.
It's just, I'm glad that you bring up HBO. We have HBO Nordic here, and it's just like the two things that I'm more than happy to pay and have like HBO Nordic and Netflix,
of course.
And that's what I've got. And then there's my entertainment, right? I've got great kick-ass series on HBO, and I've got Netflix for garbage, and it all works out. It's good. So,
and you know what? I wish. Here's a controversial statement. I wish I could pay for E-League.
For what?
For E-League. I wish I could pay $5 a month for E-League, because the amount of entertainment that I get from esports or from specific leagues, people complain about this shit all the time, but they pay like $50 a month for cable for 99% of shit they don't even use.
Exactly.
And it's like, I pay $5 a month to a tournament on Twitch, and they're recording 40, 50, 60 hours of content a month, probably more than I could even watch legitimately. And that's my entertainment. Like, what is $5 a month compared to $50 a month of a cable channel? So, frankly, I just wish that this shit all went pay-per-view, frankly.
Well, actually, I mean, hold on. Isn't there this new air quotes, right? Apple TV or whatever, right? Isn't that the option right now?
I don't know.
Fuck it. Who knows? Chat is having a laugh. Well, I mean, next. I'm trying to think of something basically as the next topic, because right now I feel like there's so many. Dude, we could go off on so many different roads, but I don't want to keep you too long either. I said 30 minutes and we're up to 53. So.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I think that's a good place. Well, tell you what.
Anyway, this has been like a very digressive conversation about business and esports, but at the end of the day, I think what we have to look at is that let's cycle back and like end this nicely, because PEA, is it fundamentally a good idea? Yes. I think this is what they're trying to do is the future of North American esports. I think that in order to get the kind of level of investment that we would all like to see in the scene, to have professional sports owners come in, this structure, from my conversations with them, is necessary. They need to have equity, blah, 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 right? But my problem with this is that these teams can't pay enough. They can't go out on a limb enough with this to make it really magnificent. Because at the end of the day, they're still endemic teams. Their revenue is predicated on receiving sponsorships. We already know that they're struggling because of what's going on in League of Legends. Ergo, they can't just like mad bankroll this to be and like drive everybody out of the market, which would be wonderful. Like, what in a perfect world, what I would love to see is a bunch of insanely rich people come into this scene, purchase equity in the existing team so that the existing owners are well rewarded and well compensated, and we get the expertise of the existing owners to continue running esports. Because the worst thing is like some giant rich jackass comes in and thinks he could do a better job and doesn't use the owners and the managers who have years and years and years of experience right now. So they buy out these teams, and then they just shove a ton of money, just like a ton of money into it to saturate the market. And that way we get the developers out, because the developers being in is actually the worst part of esports for the players, for the league, for the fucking like ridiculous riot competitive rulings, for everything. And we have an independent body form that is independent of developers, that can just create content based on the most popular games, can cycle games in and out. As a game starts to decline, maybe you take a new game from a new developer, and this is the body that has the sports control. That's what I would love to see.
We've managed to cover quite a bit, yeah. And my thoughts on it, I feel like this is just the balance to WESA, but unfortunately WESA has the bigger brands. The brands that you speak of, for example, Fnatic, etc., that have massive backing. WESA has the bigger brands, but North America, we'll see. It's true, Kijat. It's true. So that's going to be it, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. This was definitely last minute,
pleasure.
But I would love to do this again with you soon.
It's been great.
So I will catch you later. Have a great night. And guys, we'll see you around next week with another episode of State of CS. So be sure to tune in then. Peace. Take care.
Thanks.